Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the ROKER RAPPORT podcast in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's Gav and I join you once again after yet another Sunderland win. It's nice to talk about a win yet again. Like I said last week, we are talking about another Sunderland win. This week we're talking about another Sunderland win. I hope that this time next week I'm talking about another 2 Sunderland wins, but it keeps us all in a good mood, doesn't it? And I am joined once again by Phil West. Hi Phil.
Hi Gav, how are you doing?
Yes, good mate, good.
Excellent.
And also joined by Chris Wynn. Hiya Chris.
You alright, Gav?
Yes, very good because we're here to talk, like I just said, about another Sunderland win. Managed to pull one out the bag, Chris, didn't we, against Oxford? Late winner from Elliot Embleton. Send the fans home happy. It doesn't get much better than that, does it?
We did, and that's that's what you want at the business end of the season. You're playing a promotion rival, and you leave it late. We're doing it quite often, but a late goal, I don't know why, but those victories just feel a little bit more than just a kind of standard 3 points, doesn't it? You seem to celebrate them a bit more.
Yeah. And
I don't know, there's something about them that just feels a bit better, isn't it?
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of when Roy Keane was manager and we just seemed to do it every week. I don't know if you remember that sort of run as fondly as I do, but I remember like going to places like Southampton and Coventry and Birmingham, and they're just late goals. Just when you're in a promotion race, if you can do that, it feels 10 times better, doesn't it? You've got momentum behind you then.
It does. And I was just looking actually, and bizarrely, since Alex Neil's first game in charge against Wimbledon, we've scored 12 goals, and 7 of them have been in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah. It's a mark of a team heading the right direction. I think I tweeted this last night after the game. You know, the amount of late goals that we score, and it all points to better things. The annoying thing from my perspective, and I don't know if you're the same as me here, Phil, but the annoying thing is that when you look at the league table, it doesn't actually feel like we're making any progress. It's like, we're winning every week. I think I said to you guys off air, we're joint top of the form table with MK Dons and Wigan, having conceded less goals than both. So, arguably you could say we're the best defensive side in the league on top of being up there with the rest of them in terms of form. But we're not like making any ground on anybody. Nobody else is seemingly slipping up until this weekend when everybody around us, both above and below, bar Wigan, drop points. And hopefully that happens a few more times. I mean, we've got a game on Friday, a game on Monday, as do I think everybody in the league has to play those 2 games over Easter. And this is when squads start getting tested, isn't it? When the pressure's on a little bit and there's not as much time to recover, and we're actually coming down to the nitty-gritty in the season. We're at a stage now in the season where I think everybody is around about 42, 41 games played, so there isn't a lot of football left, and if you start dropping points at this stage, you could well drop out of the playoffs. So from our perspective, to be the team who is picking up momentum and not dropping points and actually beating sides around us now, as we've done with Oxford, it bodes well, doesn't it?
Yeah, huge win yesterday, Gav. Very important win. On the pod last week, I touched on the fact that it was going to be a psychological test as well as a physical test for us, the running before the playoffs hopefully begin. And yesterday was more proof of it. We didn't play particularly brilliantly by our recent standards. I felt we were a bit scrappy and a bit patchy at times. But I think the biggest thing that the teams around us will have gleaned from yesterday's result and recent results for us is that we are a team that will go the distance in order to pick up results. We are a team now under Alex Neil who are incredibly difficult to beat. We're very resilient. We're very organised. There's a great team spirit there. And this is all going to be very, very important. And what you mentioned earlier, Gav, I noticed that when you tweeted that about the Roy Keane season, actually, which I've actually written about, I've expanded on that point because I do think there are comparisons to be made there. That Keane team had an incredible, never say die attitude as well. And even when we weren't quite at our best under Keane, there were times when we would grind out a result. You wouldn't be talking about the aesthetics of the game afterwards. All you would be focusing on was the 3 points. Similar story yesterday. Not the prettiest game we've ever played, not the best performance, but 3 valuable points. And at this stage, that's all that matters.
It is, and you touched on something out there about the team ethic. Alex Neil talked about that in his post-match, Chris, and mentioned the impact that players from the bench can make in our season, have made And you just touch on it there, the amount of late goals we're scoring. Importantly, it's players off the bench who are making the impact. I mean, Embleton's came on in the last 2 games, got an assist last week and then a goal this week. He brought on Danny Barton. He addressed that in his post-match again and said, well, I was watching the game and I felt that if they were going to score a second goal, it was going to come from a corner or it was going to come from a throw-in, and that's why I brought him on. And everyone was scratching their head when he made that change. But everything he seems to be doing at the minute is working, isn't it? His game management at the minute, whether it be, bringing on a defender when it might be a bit of a head-scratcher for the fans, or taking off an attacking player who people would prefer was on the pitch. Whatever he's doing is working, isn't it? And it's really quite difficult as a fan to sit here and argue with anything he's doing at the minute.
Well, eventually. I mean, I'm going to disagree with you lads on a couple of things. We might as well make it a controversial pod. But, I mean, the Roy Keane season, I slightly disagree with you there. I remember the feeling around that, and it kind of felt like a bit of a machine that season where, I don't know, we just felt like we were going to win, where I'm not quite at that. I'm not feeling that way before games at this point. Even though we're on this good run, it still feels a bit like we're stuttering a little bit and just getting and grinding out the results. It didn't really feel like that under Roy Keane. But
do you not think it did? I don't know if I just remember it differently. I don't know. I feel like we would have a lot of close games against teams around us, and we would just Carlos Edwards would put one in from 30 yards, or David Connolly would score, and I know we're digressing a little bit and going back in time, but it did feel a bit like that to me at the time, certainly. Maybe
it's just because I'm old now and I really enjoyed that season, but and different perspective now, maybe, I don't know, but it just felt a bit more comfortable then. Maybe there's slight similarities, but I mean, just on the subject of Alex Neil not being able to kind of get anything wrong, I mean, look, going back through the games, I mean, Embleton must be banging on Alex Neil's door saying, come on, give us a starting place, because I know twice at the Stadium Light, I think once was against Burton and once might have been against Fleetwood and Crewe, where he put that ball in from the right-hand side, where he whipped it in with his left foot, and we got goals from them and went on to get points. He scored at the weekend against Gillingham. I mean, he must be banging on the manager's door, but I agree with you in the sense, Gav, that what he's doing during the game, his game management, what he's seeing is working, and he's changing the game, which is brilliant. That's what you pay a manager to do. But he's starting decisions, in terms of the starting 11, he's actually causing one or two issues that is going on during the game, which then leads him to have to change things. I mean, I didn't quite get our game plan at the weekend. I wasn't quite sure what we were trying to do with Oxford for long periods of the game, and I think it sounds like Alex Neil alluded to that after the game.
Yeah, well, it was pretty much the first thing he did when he spoke to the press was he held his hands up and said, "Look, I got it wrong first half with our setup. I'll be the first one to hold my hands up when I've made a mistake, and I've made a mistake there." Yeah, I really wasn't expecting that, to be honest.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you that what he's seeing is he's reacting to it, which is exactly what you want a manager to do. But there was some kind of head scratches in terms of his selections. I mean, Serkin as a left-sided defender, and then putting Clark as a kind of a wing-back midfielder. When we were under the cosh a little bit, it didn't quite work because you want those to go forward. So there was one or two decisions in there. But I mean, if you're talking about the defensive side of things, I mean, it's incredible at this stage of the season, making us hard to beat, like we mentioned, but we've only conceded 1 goal in the last 6 games, which at this stage of the season is exactly what you want. I mean, you've got that foundation in place, and we've already talked about. Well, we'll probably talk about them later on as well. But the amount of forward players we've got who can produce something, I mean, it bodes well that you've got that foundation locked in, that you're not conceding. So hopefully we can just keep getting the goals.
Yeah, I was a little bit I don't know if annoyed's the word, but miffed that Ross Stewart still isn't getting in amongst the goals again. Just I talked about it last week. I think it's now 8 without scoring from open play for him. He had a great chance to score. If I'm being nitpicky with our sort of forward players, it's probably that we really need him to find his shooting boots again if we are going to get promoted. And I'm sure he will. And I want to come on to this a little bit later in the pod, so I won't go over it, but his sort of role in the next few games is interesting for me. Overall, though, the amount of different goal scorers now that we've got, under Lee Johnson, it felt like there was only really Stewart scoring goals, where now you're looking at it, Corey Evans is getting a goal there, Embleton scored, and we know Embleton, he has got flaws in his game, and there are quite a few, in my opinion, in terms of his ability to sort of run and dictate games from the start. His lack of pace worries us a little bit, and he does tend to go missing. But you can't fault the lad, Phil, can you, for the way he's came in and made an impact. And Alex Neil talked about it after the game. He said that Embleton's making it very hard for him now when he's coming to him and asking why am I not starting games. He's making it very hard for us to make that decision now because he's producing. So and that's what you want. You want your fringe players or your players who are coming off the bench to be going to the manager now and with evidence and saying, look, I'm producing in games. I should be starting games. Why aren't I? You know, there's no arguing with it, is it, with Embleton in the last few?
No, not at all, Gavin. I've been banging the drum for Elliot Embleton for the best part of 2 years now because I do feel he is a player who can offer us something a little bit different in attack. And obviously Alex Neil sees his role as a little bit differently, which is fair enough, not a problem with that. But, picking up on the point that Chris just made there is that, we do have an incredible array of attacking options now. And I think what's encouraging for me is the fact that we've now got that defensive solidity. We've got that base on which to build. If we can get the attack firing just a little bit better, get the likes of Ross Stewart back into the game a little bit more, we could really put teams to the sword. So I think with Neil's management at the moment, it's very much a case of trying to find that right balance. And I think he's made us incredibly difficult to beat, which is admirable, which was much needed as well. But I still don't think we've quite clicked as an attacking force just yet. But I am convinced that will come. So I think Embleton could play a role in that. I personally, at the moment, I think he will stay on the substitute bench, maybe with a chance of becoming a starter over the Easter weekend, depending on how Neil wants to set things up. I think the other thing as well, Gav, as well, is that we're talking about the forward players. Jack Clark and Patrick Roberts really did frustrate the life out of me yesterday because the number of times they would get on the ball. What I like about them is they've got the confidence to get on the ball and drive forward. But the problem is, more often than not, when they get into those promising positions, they're cutting inside, as opposed to going out wide and trying to stretch the opposition defence. And I think that's something we need to see a little bit more of. So, again, plenty of attacking potential there. It's just how we get them, or how Alex Neil gets them kind of molded into one cohesive unit, which I think will come, without a doubt.
Just to jump in there, Phil, I mean, you said you've been banging on the door for a couple of years with Embleton, and I think Embleton's a cracking player. I really like him. He's a good player. Start of the season, he was kind of Pritchard's, I suppose, understudy in that kind of hole behind Ross Stewart, because we were playing that system. Alex Neil isn't playing that system. I mean, we started with that 3-4-3 kind of formation at the weekend. Where does Embleton fit in with the way Alex Neil's playing, do you think?
I think he plays wide, to be honest with you. I think it's a difficult one because I think we've talked about this in our WhatsApp chat, is he's yet to really nail down a position. I don't want to use the term utility player because I think that's just a lazy label that gets affixed to players every now and then. But, I think his best position in this system is probably out wide, personally. It's a very tough call, though, Chris. It's not an easy thing for Neil to have to try to shoehorn him into that thing, because obviously Pritchard's nailed down that 10 position when fit and firing, no doubt about that. And again, this is what Neil's paid the big bucks to do. These are the kind of decisions that he's going to have to make if he wants to get us towards promotion. But I do think there's a role for Embleton to play. I really, really do.
Yeah, but my slight issue is with that, with the way Alex Neil wants to play around Stewart, he wants pace around him. That's why he's got Roberts, or he started with Roberts and Broadhead, close to Ross Stewart. And Embleton, he's that type of player who likes the player being in front of him. He doesn't want to be running beyond Ross Stewart. And you can see every time that Alex Neil uses Embleton at the moment, he has to change the system to bring Embleton on. So I agree with you. There's a role from somewhere, and I agree with you again that I think he'll stay on the bench purely because he doesn't fit into the way that Alex Neil wants to start games.
Yeah.
There's two things I would pick up on there. One is that, and we don't actually talk about this very much, but when a manager makes the decision to bring on a player and they have an impact, more often than not, we then sit there and go, right, well, how do we get him into the starting 11? And I sometimes think, well, if in the last 2 games we've needed a spark from the bench and Embleton's provided that, then maybe his best role in this next 6 games and hopefully beyond is as a player from the bench. We don't always talk about players in that way because it's not really fashionable to do so, but, Embleton came off the bench and made an impact. So, it could be that that is his role.
Yeah.
You know, he stays on the bench.
The other thing as well that I would mention about Embleton as well, when he came off the bench yesterday, I thought his body language and his attitude looked really, really positive. You know, players often, if they're not in the starting 11, I know Roy Keane once mentioned this in one of his post-match interviews. He looked at the substitutes bench, and subs, if they're not picked in the starting 11, they can sit there and look a bit disinterested, or, you know, you don't trust me, gaffer, all that type of thing. I think with Embleton, I really do think he appreciates the fact that it's a squad game. He has a role to play within that squad, but he's just got to be patient and wait for his opportunity. So I like the attitude he showed when he came on yesterday. And if he wanted to send a message to Alex Neil, he couldn't have done it any more emphatically than he did yesterday, scoring that goal. So I thought he acquitted himself very, very well, I felt.
And that's especially true, Phil, in the fact that he came on with 5 minutes to go.
Yes.
So a lot of players coming on with 5 minutes to go would almost be shrugging their shoulders saying, well, you know, what do you expect us to do? And he came up with the goods and got us 3 points.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say as well, and another thing that we don't really talk much about, but Sirkin is the only left-sided player we've got, and he's not really got much pace, and he doesn't tend to overlap and get forward very, very often. And to be honest, when he does, I feel like he gets caught in his feet and sometimes struggles to take a man on. And in front of him, in recent weeks, we've had Jack Clark, who is all right foot. So we're struggling for width on that left-hand side of the pitch. Embleton isn't quick. He's very skillful and he's technically very good and he can pick a pass, but he isn't quick. So I think I'm looking at the team he picked on Saturday, and I'm looking at the way it's laid out, and it didn't go right, and he admitted that. But for me, when you look at the players we've got, he's trying to pick a balanced team, isn't he, in a way that, you know, we don't have too much of this on one side, or we're not so weak and you know, you could put Embleton and Sirkin out on the left and you probably don't have that pace out there. I don't know. I did say last week that I thought that Embleton could maybe start out wide. On the preview show with Rich, I said that, you know, I kind of taught myself out starting Broadhead. I felt maybe it came a little bit too soon for him. I thought that Embleton might play out on the left. But when you look at the system he picked, it wouldn't have worked. It's difficult because, like you said at the start, Chris, at the start of the season, when Alex Pritchard had COVID and was injured and all the rest of it, that opportunity for Embleton to nail down that spot was there because there was no competition for the place, and he played. And the problem is that when Alex Pritchard's fit, he's our best player. I've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
He's easily the best player in Sunderland's team in terms of all-round play, what he's able to offer us. So it doesn't matter how well Embleton's playing, he isn't going to take that spot from Alex Pritchard. And there's a million things to weigh up. Like, you know, you look at the team that went out there, and Lyndon Gooch playing right back, right wing back. It's out of necessity, really, because he obviously doesn't trust a great amount of the young players we've got. You know, he hasn't played Neil much. He hasn't played Tri-Hume at all.
Yeah.
Matete came back in. I was actually quite surprised by that. But out of all of them, Matete has got a little bit more experience. So maybe that's why he was thrown in. He's defensively sound. But players like Gooch keep coming into the team because of one thing, in my opinion, and it's just voices on the pitch and experience, and he tends to favour that.
He trusts them, doesn't he? Yeah.
He does. He trusts them, and whether they're playing well or not is, I think, it doesn't tell the full story, because that's why he's stuck by Evans. And I talked again when me and Rich were talking on Friday. I talked about Corey Evans, and so he's the whipping boy at the minute, but he's stuck by Evans, and these last 3 games he's been fine. I mean, he got the goal at the weekend. He got a goal, so there is method in it, I think. But it's just difficult at the minute to see how he strike. I don't think there's a perfect balance. I think in the summer he'll look at that squad and he'll rip it to bits.
He will,
because it isn't balanced enough for either league, I don't think. But we're just making do at the minute.
Yeah.
Well, another positive to this is, I mean, we're talking about all these selections, what Alex Neil's doing to start with, what he's bringing on during the game, and another positive to all this is we're talking about the form. We're unbeaten in 7, 4 wins out the last 6, conceded 1 goal in the last 6 games. And it's obvious that Alex Neil is still experimenting every single game. He doesn't know what his best side is. He doesn't really know kind of what his best options are. He's trying to mix and match. I mean, like you mentioned Lyndon Gooch. I think Lyndon Gooch was on the bench at home. But away from home, we had Clark on the left. Like you said, we had Sirkin and Clark on the left who were likely to push forward. So what Gooch's job was he was in there because of his work rate. So when those two went forward on the left-hand side, Gooch was always tucking in and he stayed back, and he was kind of almost like a standard right back, almost like a full back. And because you saw when Gooch got forward, he's struggling when he goes forward at the moment, but his work rate up and down that right hand side and away from home in a game like at the weekend against Oxford is exactly what you want Lyndon Gooch in there for, where he's just going to battle for you. He's going to run up and down. He's not going to produce anything spectacular. He's not going to do kind of anything daft. He seems to be someone who Alex Neil says, you'll keep your position. I like it. You're going to win the ball back for us. And that's why, players in there are in there like that. I mean, Matete's energy as well in the middle, exactly the same, I think, theory as Gooch. Get energy up and down away from home. And then you can see he likes more of the ball players when we're back at the Stadium of Light.
I think, Chris, just picking up on that point, do you think that by nature, Alex Neil is a manager who values kind of graft industry work rate over genuine stardust from players? Do you think that's just his approach? Get the fundamentals right first, and then garnish it with a little bit of skill and a little bit of talent everywhere else?
Absolutely. I don't know if either of you have seen an old interview. I think it was with Football Focus that he did while he was might have been at Norwich, or it might have been before Norwich. But Alex Neil did this interview on a Football Focus years ago, and you probably had to see it on YouTube or somewhere. But he basically just he was talking about his values as a manager and what he likes in his squad and his players. And he basically listed all the things you've just said, Phil. He was like, basically, I want players who are responsible, players who work hard and all this sort of stuff. And I think that's his foundation. And he's gone in, looked at our squad and said, you're a good character, you're a good character. Right, that's the basis of my squad. That's the foundation of my first 11. And then, like you said, around that, he's trying to experiment on what the best combination is around those core players that he knows are going to be there week after week. Yeah. And I don't know if he knows what is the best options around that, but I think he's got like 3 or 4 players that he knows he wants to be in there, every game after game.
Yeah,
I've been wrestling with this in my head recently because obviously I spoke to quite a few Preston and Norwich fans before he came. And I don't actually think the Alex Neil we've got is necessarily what they've described to us, but I think that's out of pure necessity. I think he's had to look at what he was handed, which is a squad of very talented players, but which wasn't particularly balanced. A lot of young players who were being flogged, playing every week. We haven't really seen a lot of the players that Lee Johnson plays a lot of trust in.
Alan Doyle's a great example. Yeah,
Doyle and Dan Neil, they just haven't featured, and I think he's looked at the squad, he's looked at what he's got, and he's went, what is the easiest? What's the best way to get this team promoted?
Yeah.
And I think if we do get promoted, regardless of what we do in the summer, whether we get promoted or not, I don't think he's going to have a team like this. I don't think they're going to play this way. I think when he's got a clean slate in the summer, regardless of what the league is, I just don't think this is how it'll play. I just think this is very much a case of a manager coming in, picking up a squad of players from another manager, basically, and just looking at it and going, how do I get through? How do I hit my target this season? It isn't going to be by necessarily playing the style of football that got us results at Norwich and Preston. It's going to be by doing this. And that is why all of these experienced players who aren't all favoured by the fans feature so heavily. Yeah. Because I'll not necessarily name names, but I did get a tidbit of conversation from a current member of staff via a friend recently who mentioned that the reason that Try Hume hasn't featured so much is because Winchester is a big personality and he's a voice on the pitch and he's a leader, and so he's playing, you know what I mean? Because Alex Neil's looking at it and going, I need these people on the pitch. If we're going to get there come the end of the season, I need these people on the pitch. And, in the summer, I don't think that'll be the case. I think you might look at it from a different angle. And
I think the other thing as well that you have to do is that you kind of caveat whatever Alex Neil achieves this season with the fact that this is not really his squad of players, which is a similar situation to when Lee Johnson came in, and he came in and he had to patch a team. He had to patch a defence together with sticky tape, and then obviously we fell short last season. The squad then turns over. We bring in new players, and it'll be the same this season. So I think what you've said there is absolutely right, Gav, as well. Is that we have to have kind of one eye on the summer and what Alex Neil will do with this squad, or how we will probably, as you said, dismantle this squad, rebuild it in his own image. So that'll be an interesting talking point when the season finishes, without a doubt.
There's two things I wanted to raise against that. I mean, the first one being you two were both talking about this, reminding you of the Roy Keane season. For me, and I was going to mention this earlier on, but forgot, it actually reminds me of last season. And you've just mentioned it there, Phil, that it does remind me of last season where Lee Johnson came in, tried to do the best with what he had. Last season, he had the combination of McGeady and Wyke, which he just said, that works, just carry on doing that. This season, we haven't got that obvious, clear-cut combination. We've had injuries as well. Pritchard's kind of picked up injuries and things like that. So Alex Neil is trying to work, like you said, with what he's got to try and get the right formula as quickly as possible because he's running out of time. We've got kind of, 6 games left, something like that. The other thing, talking about dismantling the squad, I mean, we talked about this last season. This is the thing that worries us. We talked like last season. We were there or thereabouts. Right, let's dismantle the squad and start again.
Yeah.
And we're using the same words again 12 months later. And if you're doing that, something's gone wrong. Something's gone massively wrong in the plan. If we're talking about dismantling this squad again with 12 months later, Alex Neil wants to do something completely different. And I'm just worried that we're just going to keep repeating the same mistakes. And we'll see. I mean, if you two are both saying that Alex Neil might want to dismantle the squad, I think in the summer we'll see clearly exactly what the plan is in terms of Speakman, in terms of the owner.
Absolutely.
Because if they do dismantle the squad, then it's clear that they've kind of ripped up this, we're going to bring in the players in the model that how we want Sunderland to play, and they're bending to the whim of the manager.
Yeah, I say that in January I wasn't happy with how it ended. I felt that we left ourselves short at left back, and that's why we're unbalanced on the left. There's certain things I would have done in January that they didn't do, and I think we all thought along the same lines. And regardless of the fact that we're now picking up results, we're doing so with an unbalanced team to a degree. I've spoke quite a lot recently about the depth of the squad. I maintain it. We have got a better squad than anyone in this league. It keeps showing it every week when we keep picking up results with players coming off the bench. If you can bring a player like Elliot Embleton off the bench who would start for every other team in this league, you're doing all right, aren't you? You've got Danny Bart coming on. Callum Doyle didn't even make it off the bench. Dan Neil didn't even make it off the bench. You've got a keeper on loan from Bayern Munich sat on the bench. You've got Tri Hume, who's just made his full international debut, who would probably feature for most teams in this league. And then you've got all these other players who weren't even on the bench, like say Pritchard, McGeady isn't even fit, etc., etc. These players are here, but the problem is that regardless, they could all be fit. I still feel like we're not quite balanced enough in terms of the squad. But you've got to give him credit. The results have been fantastic. He's found a way to work it out.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
It's the problem is as well for a lot of people is that the performances haven't been great.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this a few times recently in terms of whether or not the performances are actually that important. And I've said they aren't to me. They're not. And I would also say that it depends how you judge a performance, doesn't it? Because are we talking about that all good football is just teams playing other teams off the park and walking to victory? Or is good football when your manager recognises during a game that something's not working, he makes a change, the players rally together because they've got a great team spirit like our team does right now, and they get the goal. Yeah. And we score late on. And as a fan in the away end, there's nothing better than celebrating a late goal, a late winner. So, what is the right way to do things? I don't know. To me, the right way to do things is to find a way to win games, which is exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Alex Neil wants his players to come off the park, tanks empty, covered in sweat, having given everything during that 90 minutes. I think that's what he classes as good football. Effort, endeavour, as Chris said, plenty of graft, plenty of hard work. And at the moment, if in my opinion, and I'm with you on this, Gav, at this stage in the season, I think when everything is so closely fought in that promotion shake-up that we're trying to get into, I think the emphasis has to be on results over aesthetics. And look, I don't find Alex Neil a particularly inspiring manager. I hold my hands up on that. I don't find him particularly charismatic. I don't really care about that, to be honest with you. What I care about is the fact that he's turned us into a solid, hard-to-beat team with a good ethos, good team spirit, good attitude. And at this stage in the season, when we're going for a promotion, that is all that matters. Performances, you can worry about them early doors, in the season, when you're trying to kind of make a statement as to what kind of team you want to be. In the autumn time, for example, that's, I think, when the emphasis needs to be on performance. But now has to be about results. So if the end justifies the means, I'm all for it. And at this stage, it's hard to argue against his record without a doubt.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I agree with that. The results kind of speak for themselves at the moment. My only concern is on the kind of performance front is if he can keep doing it, absolutely fantastic. No bother. We'll get through it in terms of the playoffs and stuff like that. But my worry is that we seem to be winging it game by game.
Yeah.
Against Oxford, there was long periods of the game where I couldn't work out what our game plan was. Was it knock it long? Was it play it, was it keep possession? Was it hit them on the counter-attack? I just couldn't tell what our game plan was. And that's the worrying thing for me, that if we can keep winging it and getting results and putting out a team and just getting the result because, he's making changes and he's impacting the game and we're getting results. If he can do that for long enough and get us up, then yeah, quite rightly, I don't care. It'll get us there. But my only concern is I can't tell what he's trying to do. We're not keeping the ball very well. We're not playing very good balls kind of forward. If we want to get forward quickly, we're not catching teams on the break. We don't seem to have a way of playing at the moment. And that is my only concern, that it doesn't seem like much of a plan at the moment. And I don't know whether that might bite us in it when it comes to the playoffs.
The only thing I would say is that how many times over the last sort of 4 seasons have we sat here and gone, I wish we could just shithouse our way out this league. Like, look at the teams who've done it, and we sit there and we're envious of the fact that they just shithouse the league. They win by hook or by crook, and Sunderland couldn't do that. And now I feel like we are a team who can do that, and we are doing it. The evidence is there. We're getting late goals, so it's difficult.
It's a uniquely Sunderland thing, isn't it? Really, is that like if another team ground out a 1-0. We'd be saying, they're so streetwise, they're so savvy, they're so smart, etc., and they're a solid team. If we do it, we've kind of winged it, we've scraped it, and I think that's just a way of. I mean, how many times have we sat here when we've had a really good performance and we've won, and some people have said, it's just papering over the cracks. There's plenty of underlying issues there, etc., etc., etc. It's as if we can't establish that there's a kind of a right or a wrong way to win a game of football. But I've always said, when you're walking away from the stadium at the end of the game, in my mind, it's, do we have the points in the bag, first and foremost, and then we think about the performance. And at this stage, as I said earlier, at this stage of the season, every point is absolutely vital. So points over performances for me at this moment in time, personally.
Yeah, and you're both right. Absolutely, hit the nail on the head there, Gav. But it's the psychology of Sunderland being in League One.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's been like this from day one, that, when we're in our first season in League One, we thought we should just run away with this and get back up because we're Sunderland. And then the second season, right, okay, well, we'll get 100 points this season because we're Sunderland. And, we beat Gillen at home 1-0. Yeah, but 3 points isn't good enough because we didn't play well enough.
Yeah.
And it's that psychology that I don't think we'll ever get over, because we shouldn't be in League One. If we shit our way to these results in the Championship, we'd be absolutely gushing over getting the points and, pushing for the playoffs in the Championship, and we might be Premier League next year. It's just the psychology of being where we are, that we think that essentially we're underachieving. Even at times we score in the last minute and win 1-0, it's an underachievement because we should do it better. And
we can't seem to find that satisfaction, can we? It's like
exactly.
we're never, no matter how well we play, it's like, well, that's the bare minimum we should be achieving because of the squad we've got, etc., etc. And I think you're absolutely right, Chris. That is a mindset that will have to change at some point. And I think I agree. I don't think it will change until we do escape this league.
Yeah.
And then when we're in the Championship, and then we're playing against teams who maybe with a kind of a similar heritage and a history to ours, that's when your mindset can change. So I think it's a very interesting point, without a doubt.
One person we haven't mentioned at all, and I think deserves a big mention from my perspective in terms of how he affected the game, was Patterson in goal.
Yeah.
I think if anybody came away from that and didn't feel like he was the man who won us the game ultimately, then I know Embleton's goal was very important in the end, but Patterson made a number of saves in that second half, particularly the one where it looked like he was sort of 10 yards in front of the line and dove backwards to hook it off the line. That was such an important save when you think of the scope of the season and you look at the results at the weekend. When you look at everything in perspective, and then you see what that save actually meant to the overall result of the game.
It's
just amazing. And that kid, to be, and I said this last week, but I'll say it again, I didn't know what to expect from him. So when he first arrived on the scene and I was going to watch the 23s, it was very clear to me that he was good. Like, I could see, I go to watch quite a lot of 23s football and most of it's rubbish. But when you do see the odd player who's got something about them, they stand out, and he stood out. And then when he first came into the first team, for real, when I say for real, I'm not counting sort of trophy games, EFL trophy games. When he first came into the team this season, he had a handful of decent performances, then he had a handful where he wasn't so good. And then he went off to Notts County and he came back, and I don't think anyone was expecting him to play. And he's just took his chance, and he's done one thing which a lot of keepers can't do, and that's when they don't have much to do, he stays on his toes and he makes important saves. And there were two in that second half which won us the game in my view, and I'm over the moon because it's another young kid from the academy who's showing us what he can do and actually taking his opportunity. And I don't think, like I said before there, I don't think anybody would have foreseen he would be our number one, but barring injury, I don't see how anybody else takes that shirt off him at this point. What about you, Phil?
Well, I mean, before Patterson came into the team, I was a fully paid up member of the Thorburn Hoffman Appreciation Society because I thought he looked really, really good in the games he played, particularly early season. But there's no doubt that Patterson's come into the squad. He's looked very, very solid. He's been very, very reliable. He hasn't been perfect. And I think there are elements of his game that he needs to work on. But I thought yesterday felt like a real kind of coming-of-age performance for him. It was the kind of performance, without trying to get too carried away here, because obviously he's still got work to do. I thought just the way he went about his business yesterday, the way he keeps everybody nice and calm at the back, he's command of the area. I just think he's a really, really good goalkeeping prospect. And we can argue that maybe he was pitched in because of necessity, because of Hoffman injury, etc., or illness or whatever it was. But he's taken his chance, and you have to credit Neil for putting that faith in him. He's done a very, very good job since he came in. So for me, I think it's a good dilemma for Neil to have two good goalkeepers on hand that he can call upon in this run-in. So I think Patterson's done very, very well, without a doubt.
Yeah, you touched on there, Phil, how Patterson had to come back from being on loan. And we heard from, I'm pretty sure it was Notts County fans, Notts County, wasn't it, where he was out on loan?
Yeah.
And Notts County fans were absolutely gushing over him, saying he was they were gutted that he left. They were saying, it's going to ruin our chances for the rest of the season and all that sort of stuff. And you could tell that Patterson was comfortable there. He went to that level and he thought, I'm kind of a big man here. And, he went in there, put in performances. Notts County fans loved him. And because he was kind of parachuted back when Hoffman went down with COVID, he almost he was taken out of a comfort zone at Notts County. And you could tell in those early games that he was like, oh, hang on, I'm not particularly comfortable here. He was a big fish in a small pond at Notts County, and he came back and he looked a bit overawed with being thrown back in and saying, you're the number one. So he took a while to get warmed up. But I mean, like you said, conceded one goal in the last 6 games. You can't knock any keeper for that. Absolutely, superb statistics. But just on the game itself, the focus will be on those late saves. But I'll point to a save that he made in the very first minute when Oxford was going to, I can't remember who it was, but they bent one right in the top corner and Patterson got a hand to it and tipped it over the bar. Because if they had taken the lead in the first minute and we were playing how we were playing in that first half, it could have been a completely kind of different game, really. So I just think he's one of these that, with goalkeeper performances, we want to call out a good goalkeeper performance. So it's not as if he's sitting there doing nothing for most of the game. It was like 3 or 4 really good saves to keep us in the game. So absolutely no problem with Patterson carrying on in goal at the minute.
I think just one final point on Patterson, and you've just mentioned that there, Chris. It was as if he was when he came back, when he was recalled from Notts County, it was as if he'd just been flung the gloves and said, here you go, Pat, here's your chance. Make the most of it type of thing, and I think it was a real baptism of fire for him, and the mentality he has shown to kind of rise to that challenge, I think has been very, very impressive. And I think with your goalkeeper, mentality is so crucial, as Gav said, the ability to keep your concentration for the entire game, even if you're not called into action as regularly, to be able to switch on for that crucial save, that crucial block, that crucial catch that you've got to make, absolutely vital. And I think he's shown all those qualities without a doubt.
The other strand to that, which people might call us a bit soft for this, but I don't think Sunderland's been a very easy place for young players to come in the last 4 years while we've been in League One. I mean, the atmosphere has been, that we should be steamrolling teams. We should be kind of, winning 3-4-0 at home. We should be beating these sides. And there's a lot of pressure. And there's a lot of pressure on all the players who are pulling on Sunderland ships at the minute because the club shouldn't be in this position. But for young players to come in and try and impress at this level with the pressure that's on them, I think it's a tough place for young players to come in. And for Patterson to be then saying, you're the number one of this club and it's down to you to kind of be the number one goalkeeper, like you said, especially coming back from being on loan from, I think it was in the National League. Like you said, it was a big step from him, and you can't fault them that the way he stepped up to it.
No. So an important result, an important win, sets us up nicely for the next game, which is, of course, Shrewsbury on Good Friday. So we haven't got as long to wait. We've got a day less before that game. I've looked at their results recently, and there could be a sticky one. These, I'm not taking them seriously, if that makes any sense. Look at the league table and the sort of in the middle. They're in 16th, but they've picked up some mad results recently. I know that they managed to get a draw against Ipswich at the weekend late on. Ipswich are a decent team who were sort of still in the running for a playoff place. They're probably out of it now. Lost to MK Dons last week, but they beat Rotherham 3-0 away, and that was only a couple of weeks ago. And that's just making us think, we've got to take them seriously. We've got to be guarded because they're not that bad. They're not a bad side. I look at their lineup and, apart from the obvious Tom Flanagan sat there in the defence, they're not a bad team. They've got some good League One players, and I'm just concerned that this might be another one of those games where a team comes and puts 10 men behind the ball and frustrates us. Yeah. Luckily, the last 3 home games, we've worked out a way to beat these teams. But when you look at what I was saying before, where we're not seemingly making any progress in the table, we just seem to just be 7th, 6th. We're not pushing out of that sort of area at all because nobody else is really dropping that many points. We've got to win this game. When you look at the rest of the fixtures, a home game against a mid-table team, you've got to beat them, haven't you, Chris? It's a given at this point, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, I know Alex Neil will probably turn around if we don't win and say, well, we've got another 5 games left and there's still plenty of time and that would be true. But for me, looking at those fixtures, that when I'm on about which ones are nailed on wins that you have to win, this is one of them.
Yeah. But like you said, I mean, we're talking about bobbing around the same kind of area of the table, even though we're winning. And I don't mind that because imagine if we weren't picking up points and everyone else would be out of the race already, would be 10th, 11th in the table. I mean, take kind of 6 points off us, where would we be? We wouldn't probably wouldn't be in touching distance. So I don't mind picking up points if everyone else is in that sense, because I'd rather be in the mix. But yeah, the games like Shrewsbury, if you look at the fixtures we've got left, the Shrewsbury at home, the Cambridge at home, I mean, we've got a fantastic record at home, and I don't know why I feel this, but I feel more apprehensive about kind of those two than probably the other games that we've got left, the Plymouth, the Rotherham, and the Morecambe. Just because you said we found a way against Fleetwood and Crewe, but it was they were slogs, and it'll be interesting on Friday to see because he's got a full week, which is pretty rare, especially at this stage of the season. It's his last full week on the training ground with the players. Before then, it's Friday, Monday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday after that. So it'll be interesting to see how we shape up against Shrewsbury, because Alex Neil looks like he's someone who does his homework. He'll have looked at the Fleetwood and the Crewe games and thought, we need to do something different, because we can't slog away at it for 70 minutes, get nowhere, and hope that somebody's going to come up with some bit of magic in the last 15 minutes. So I'll be looking for us to do something different against Shrewsbury. Just on the Rotherham point, because you mentioned Rotherham, and we've obviously got them on the 26th, so a few days before the last day of the season. I was talking to a Rotherham season ticket holder this morning. They are incredibly worried. I mean, he was saying they were awful at the weekend, and they have been for weeks. He was basically saying that you can't see where kind of the points are going to come from. They're playing that badly. He says just everybody's out of form. They all look knackered, and they're really struggling for points. He's saying, well, he's fully expecting not to be in the automatics. So it'll be interesting to look out for Rotherham results until we play them to see if they pick up at all, and that's going to be a big one before the end of the season, I think.
They've been crap since the middle of February.
Yeah.
They've totally chucked it. They looked like they were going to run away with it at one point, and now you're looking at it, they might not even finish in the top 3, which is crazy. So it does show that there's a lot of pressure on all of these games. The one thing that I would point out about this weekend coming up, Wickham play Plymouth same time as we play, so that's a big game because Wickham are below us, Plymouth are above us. I think we could do with Plymouth doing us a favour there. Really, we're not in the race with Plymouth, are we? I don't think at this stage. We probably need a Plymouth win there. Even a draw wouldn't be too bad. But then MK Dons and Sheff Wed don't play till Saturday night, so we have a chance to put a bit of pressure on Sheff Wed. If we win that game, they've got to wait a whole another day to play, and it's against a team who are now vying for the league title, so away from home as well. So, it does show, doesn't it? Now we're starting to look at all these games and we're picking out the fixtures of what other teams are playing. It's getting the squeaky bum time now, and if you look at those 3 games, Wickham are playing Plymouth, who are 4th. MK Dons going for the league title at home against Sheff Wed a day after we play. Sunderland v Shrewsbury is the pick of those games. Really, you would rather be playing Shrewsbury at home, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, so, I mean you would be, yeah, you would be, and the thing is as well is that for all we know, I think Chris mentioned it. It could be a bit of a wild card stroke banana skin game for us. Given how unpredictable this league is, we could come out on Friday, play a really good attacking game, and blow Shrewsbury off the park. It could be another Sheff win. You just never ever know how the cards are going to fall in this league. It could be a slog again. It could be one of those games where we've got to be patient, grind it out, or we could be on it from the first minute. We could put them to the sword, and everybody could be celebrating at the end of the game. So I just think it's going to be one of those. It could be one of those peculiar games. The margin for error, though, is minimal, as you rightly said, Gav. We are so kind of in the middle of what is a very, very tight playoff race now. Teams are going to be nipping at each other's heels right into the final whistle of the final game of the regular season. But we've just got to uphold our end of the bargain. We've just got to keep on knocking off the wins if we can, leave others to their own devices, and see how the cards fall when all is said and done for us. Yeah,
and the Easter weekend. I always love Easter weekend because everything could just turn on its head Easter weekend. I always remember our first season at the stadium, like when we had QPR on the Friday and then we had West Brom on the Monday, and we blew it. We drew both games when we were winning them both, and we blew automatic promotion. So anything, I mean, two games in 4 days for everyone. I mean, it could all turn on its head.
Jumping slightly ahead from that as well, if you look at the games Easter Monday and then the Tuesday, we play Easter Monday at the same time as Wickham, who are away at Wimbledon, who I don't think Wimbledon have won in 20 odd games, have they? But then, yet again, Sheff Wed don't play till Tuesday night, so they've got another day to wait after that game. So what I'm saying is, if we carry on doing what we're doing and we keep winning games, we're putting all of the pressure back onto Sheff Wed, who have to wait to play.
Yeah,
they've got a full day. I mean, you could look at it the other way and go, if we blow the points, then they've got a day, and they're then up for it a bit more, and they're looking at it and they're going, right, come on, Sunderland drop points, let's pick up and let's make up ground on them. But for me, I see that as a positive in our favour. I think that Plymouth away is going to be hard, but you take one game at a time. You look at the one that we've got, Shrewsbury at home. You've got to win that game. And then that gives you a little bit more momentum going to Plymouth, while teams around us have got difficult fixtures, and everybody's running out of time. Everybody's clawing away for those same 2 positions. And I keep saying this to people. I'm actually really confident. I'm one of the more optimistic Sunderland fans, and I try to see the best in everything. But like at the minute, I would be, as a fan of Wickham or as a fan of Sheff Wed or a fan of Oxford, particularly Oxford now they've played us, I'd be looking at us and going, oh, they're quite ruthless, these guys. That they're difficult to beat, and they're managing to find ways to win games, and they've got a cracking team spirit, and they've got a squad of players which should be the envy of everyone in the league. Because when the game's not going in their favour, we'll just throw on a couple of England youth internationals or this guy, or it's working out for us at the minute, and it's got to be seen as a positive.
It is, I completely agree with that. It's all positive, but then I think with the position we're in, though, and the form we're in, we should, at the position we're in, we should make the playoffs, which kind of cranks up the pressure a little bit. because we're in. I think after last weekend, we're in the driving seat, and we've got the fixtures, we've got the form, so there's a fair bit of pressure on us to do that because we should do it.
I think it's psychological, isn't it? It's like it's if you're playing, just to use an analogy from a different sport, it's like if you're playing darts, you hold your own throw, puts all the pressure on the guy who's coming up to throw next, doesn't it? And I think it's a similar situation here. We uphold our end of the bargain by keep on churning out the wins, and that puts all the pressure on the likes of Sheffield Wednesday to respond to that. So I think that, and I think that's, again, where I would trust us with Alex now, because I think psychologically he's toughened us up and he's made us harder to beat. So I think mentally we are more resilient now than we were under Lee Johnson. And I think that bodes very, very well. Yeah,
and even looking further ahead from the Easter weekend, we have 3 games in a week, starting with Cambridge at home and ending with Morecambe away. I just think when you look at our fixtures, I know we've got Plymouth and Rotherham to play, but I just think when you look at our fixtures and the way that we're playing at the minute and the way we're picking up results, it would only be Sunderland who could blow that. So,
kiss of death.
but that's it. I mean, I don't think. I mean, at this point, the odds are on us to do it. We should be with one of the playoff positions. If we don't make the playoffs from this position in the form we're in with the fixtures we've got, we'll have really blown it.
Yeah. All right then. Well, good chatting to you lads. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure as always. We've blabbered on a lot longer than we normally do, but it was a good conversation, so I'll let you off. Shrewsbury next, like I say, on Friday. I'm hoping we'll have a preview out. That might be with you, Chris. We'll try and sort something in the next few days for that, so people can check that out. Over on ROKER Report, I can't get my words together. I've talked that long, I've lost my ability to speak. ROKERreport.com this week. There will be plenty of stuff reacting not only to the weekend's games, but looking ahead to the Easter weekend, and hopefully some more victories for Sunderland. Hopefully I'm back here next Sunday talking about how we were great. Yes, once again, another game. So thanks lads, thanks for joining us. Thanks everybody for tuning in and staying around for 50 odd minutes. And we'll catch you next week.